We're starting up now after the break, and this will now take us without another break to 2:30 today, East Coast time. Our first speaker, post-break speaker, is the one we've all mentioned. So your reputation apparently precedes you. This is Professor Ervin Staub, Professor Emeritus, University of Massachusetts. And I was going to say the grandfather, but Ervin, you're too young for that. So I'm going to say the father of the science behind this. And Ervin, I turn it over to you.
Thank you very much. Actually, as you know, I am also the father of the program because I created the original version of it in 1992 after the Rodney King incident. Then I was invited by Peace Officer Standards of Training in California to create a program for them so that such things won't happen again. But people are talking about defunding police, and obviously we do need police. What we need, though, is a transformation of police departments. And that is possible, as we heard other people talk so far. And I believe that it is possible to create very effective active bystandership programs for a couple of reasons. One of them is, please don't faint, but I have studied things related to active bystandership for 50+ years. And the power of active bystanders is very great. Unfortunately, the power of passive bystanders is also very great. Passive bystanders can allow the unfolding of violence. One of the sources, the kinds of research on the basis of which I created the original program, was research that I have done on mass violence, group violence, violence by groups against other groups, often a majority of society against a minority, mass killing, genocide. And in the 6 or 7 instances that I studied in great depth, and the 2 or 3 that I studied in not as great depth, in all of these instances, what happened was that when harmful behavior by a group against another group began, since usually there were no inhibiting factors, usually there were no active bystanders, either from within the society or from outside the society, who would attempt to intervene, the violence evolved. I talk about learning by doing, how individuals and groups change as a result of their own actions. Without inhibiting forces, when they harm others, they justify what they have done. How do they do that? They do it by derogating those they harmed more. And we know that a very important source of harming others is a negative view of them, a devaluation of them, and derogation of them, seeing them as dangerous, seeing them as morally bad, and so on. And that's what happens in every instance. Another way that people justify harm doing is to look for higher values, that supposedly harming these others benefits the whole society. And the same can apply to police. If they engage in harmful action, they are likely to justify it by seeing those whom they harm in a very negative light, an increasingly negative light, and also sometimes possibly thinking, oh, I am protecting my group from these people. So this evolution is very problematic. Fortunately, there is also positive evolution. How do we know that? Well, we know that from research, and we know that from certain examples. I have done a series of studies a long time ago with young children, 5th and 6th graders, got them involved in helping others. For example, they would make toys for poor hospitalized children and compared their helping behavior later on to kids who made toys, but not for poor hospitalized children. So they engage in the same activity, but not for the same purpose. And the helping behavior increased only of those who made toys for poor hospitalized children. We can use other form of helping. Older children teaching younger children in varied forms of helping increases later helping behavior. And perhaps more directly relevant, sadly, in every group violence, while there is this increase in harm doing, the bystanders, the people who are not victims and not the perpetrators, remain passive. But once the actual killing of the targeted group starts, then a very small percentage of people begin to help them, try to hide people, try to help people move to safer areas. And in doing that, they endanger themselves, they endanger their children, they endanger their families, and still they help. They have been referred to as rescuers. In the largest study of rescuers in Nazi Europe, about half of them initiate action themselves. They see some harm done, and then they decide the next time when I have an opportunity, I will help. But another 50% or so help because they are asked by someone to help. They are asked by a person they knew, a work associate, or they are asked by an intermediary, somebody from the community who asks them to help these people, to hide these people. Sometimes it's an influential person. It may even be a priest who asks them to hide people. And some of these rescuers, even though they themselves did not have the idea of rescue, they agree, they hide people. They think they will hide them for a small period of time, but then they end up sometimes hiding them for years. And they take in more people. And some of them, if they succeed in moving these people to another area, they look for more opportunities to help. I consider this as another example of learning by doing. And I would like to suggest to you that learning by doing, both in a negative direction and in a positive direction, applies to police. Once police officers begin to be active bystanders and engage in active bystandership, they come to see themselves as helpers. They come to value the people they help more. They come to value the valuable, significant connection that they develop, that develops in the group, within their group as a result, and it has very positive effects. So this is one source of both not helping and helping. But there is a whole other body of research that is relevant that I have conducted, and others' research is also relevant. Experimental research, setting up situations where people have an opportunity to help. So in one of my studies, which Jonathan also loves and loves to talk about, and he is very kind to me by holding back when I am also talking at that event and allowing me to talk about this study. I have somebody two people working on a task, and one of them is my associate, and the other one is the real participant in the study. And there is a crash and sounds of distress from the other room. Depending on what my associate says, the likelihood of help by the other person, the likelihood of going into the other room, which makes it possible to help, varies from about 25% to 100%. So let me take an immediate version. When that person, my associate, says, that sounds bad, maybe we should do something, and remains seated, about 50% of the time, the other person goes into the other room. When that person says, that sounds bad, maybe we should do something, I go and find the person in charge, you go into the other room. 100% of the time, the other person goes into the other room. One example of the power of bystanders. Focusing responsibility on people to help makes a very big difference. So I did a study with children. When a child would be told, somebody else is working in the other room, they would be working on a task in one room, and they would hear, and in some conditions, they were told nothing else. In some condition, they were told, there is somebody else working on a task in the other room. If anything happens, you are in charge. First graders, when they are told this, and there is a crash and sounds of distress, are significantly more likely to go into the other room to see what happened. There is a lot of other evidence also that when a person is in a position of responsibility and something happens, they are more likely to initiate help. Our training focuses responsibility on officers to take action and to help. And that's one of the ways that contributes to helping behavior. Be asked by somebody in a media interview, can bad apples change? And the answer to that is yes. Bad apples are the people who initiate unnecessary harmful action. How do they change? You can't take them back to childhood and re-socialize them. But groups have very great power over their members, especially tight-knit groups. So imagine that there is a real culture change in a police unit, a police organization, and officers begin to act as active bystanders. Now, by the way, I just want to say that when officers remain passive in the face of harmful behavior by a fellow officer, they also kind of become bad apples. But I am talking about the primary bad apples who initiate harmful action. So others start to act as active bystanders. And when this so-called bad apple now initiates harmful action, others intervene. This happens once, maybe this happens a second time. What is it like for a person to have others, fellow officers, intervene and stop him or her for this kind of behavior? It's humiliating. It's problematic. And the behavior of this person almost certainly is going to change. maybe they will even start to be active bystanders. But we human beings have powerful, spontaneous forces within us for integration. We don't like it to behave one way and hold beliefs that are in opposition to our beliefs. So over time, the beliefs, the thinking that leads such a person to harmful behavior is also likely to change. And the bad apple stops being a bad apple. As everybody has indicated already, for a department to really change, everybody has to be trained, including the chiefs, and maybe especially the chiefs. Without the chiefs supporting changed behavior, things are not going to happen, because people who are active bystanders will be punished. There are a couple of stories floating around in the media and elsewhere about people who initiated active bystandership and were fired from their jobs because it was not acceptable. As we know, the usual values in police right now is that you support your fellow officer no matter what that fellow officer does. And that has to be changed so that good teamwork now means to stop your fellow officer. You know, when I initiated this training, there was a very important element that is not part of it, that was not part of it. It focused on the benefit of citizens who won't be harmed, and it focused on community police relations. If police officers harm citizens unnecessarily, there is a reciprocal negative reaction from the community. They are not going to be supported. People are not going to come forward as witnesses to various bad behavior, and so on. But I never talked about the benefits to the police officers. And that is a crucial way to draw members of a police department in when they realize the very significant benefits to them. And it's not only to police officers who won't lose their jobs or who won't be criminally prosecuted for bad behavior or for passive bystanders. It's also to ethical officers within a department who are surrounded by unethical behavior and whose life therefore is uncomfortable, stressful, problematic. And people already referred to this, that when you reduce these stresses, that affects also families who will also be less stressful. And
Ervin?
These are very important and significant changes.
So Professor Staub, I'm gonna stop you there, and I'm gonna remind everyone that if they want to hear more of what you have to say, they should come to the EPIC conference and they should sign up for the Train the Trainer event. But at the moment, I'm going to thank you so much, and also tell everyone that they should buy like your 100 books you've written as well. Thank you very much for volunteering for all you do for EPIC and ABLE.
That's very kind of you. It was only 97.
Well, that's well more than my 2. So Dr. Staub, thank you so much. And we're going to now pass the microphone